Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm not in today. My son is sick. I should be back tomorrow. In this video, we're going to go over some of the notes today before you do your assignment. So today's all about America's economic system, whether or not you think it's fair, and how people have protested against this system. So we'll talk about some of the issues people have with the U.S. economy and our economic system. If we're looking at the United States today, it seems like millions of Americans are struggling just to afford to live, to afford things like rent and groceries. With inflation, things are getting more and more expensive. It doesn't feel like wages are keeping up with that. They've done some studies and they found that 75% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So something happens to your car, something happens to your home, you get hurt and you have medical bills. If you have a $1,000 bill due in a month, most Americans can't make that work, that they'll have to go into debt to deal with this. And that's not a lot of money. I mean, $1,000 is a lot, but at the same time, compared to all the bills you have to pay, like Americans should be able to cover that. You should be able to have a couple months worth of bills in a savings account, and most Americans don't. They can't afford that. It's not realistic. And if we look at some of the issues people are upset about, one of the first ones is wealth distribution. So who owns the money? All right, so if we're looking at this, 74% of the money in the United States is owned by just 13 million people. So very few people own almost 3/4 of all the wealth in the United States. If we look at the next 24% of the money in the world, that is owned by 52 million people. And then 2%, a very small amount, 65 million Americans. And so if we think about the wealth, most of the wealth is held by very few people. Another issue people have when it comes to wealth and economic system is the power of corporations. Right? A corporation is, you could say, is a company that owns other companies. Right? So here's one showing like the food industry. We got like Kraft. Right? We know that it's a cheese. Right? It started as sort of a cheese company, but look at all the other companies they own. Candy, different food products. Right? Same thing with Nestle. It's supposed to be a candy and chocolate company. It owns like hygiene products and water and all sorts of different stuff. All these companies own other companies. It gives them a huge amount of wealth and power. Here's one when it comes to media. Right? Disney isn't just Disney. They own ESPN, they own ABC, and lots of other things. Same thing when it comes to NBC and CBS. They own tons of the media. So when you think about all the news outlets we have, well, it's controlled by like 4 or 5 different companies, and that's it. And then there's the investment companies that don't necessarily own, say like Disney, but they've invested in it huge percentages, so they have a lot of influence. And these are some of the 3 big ones, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. They have a huge amount of wealth and influence in all these companies. So they have a huge impact on our economy, but then they also influence our politicians, right? Donating money to campaigns, right? Being involved in legislation. Right? Companies seem to have a huge amount of influence, and maybe that's not fair. Here we're looking at the cost of living. When it comes to different places around the country, you can see the Denver area, right? Monthly costs. Right? They're averaging up in the $8,000 a month. If you want to live in Denver, you probably need to be making $8,000 a month, which is in the ballpark of like $100,000 a year. Also, something that a lot of people think is a basic need, healthcare, is also insanely expensive. Right? You're talking thousands of dollars a month to just have healthcare. Now, a lot of people have protested against this system with marches, rallies, sit-ins, boycotts, litigation, lots of forms of protest. About 10 years, there's a major protest called Occupy Wall Street, which was essentially a giant sit-in. People would go to Wall Street, refuse to leave, start demanding changes in our economic system to support the average person, not companies. right? People want more taxes on the rich, more taxes on corporations. And this is a protest outside World Economic Forum, so where a lot of big businesses and leaders talk about the economy. Right? And as these protests fail to get results, people get more and more angry, right? This guy saying striking the World Economic Forum, eat the rich, right? A very extreme statement, obviously not to be taken literal, but like this idea of like, what do we need the rich for? It's the average person that needs to be supported. And this leads to some extreme actions. If you know about this man, he murdered a healthcare CEO, and he did it saying like the healthcare industry is corrupt, right? And he was lashing out violently and angrily, which obviously is not an acceptable form of protest to be murdering people. But a lot of Americans understood where his anger was coming from. And so when protests go unlistened to and unacknowledged, you might get some dangerous, violent results. Today, it was supposed to be a gallery walk. We're not going to be able to actually do the gallery walk, but the assignment is on Schoology. You'll be able to see lots of different pictures about um, different protests being done when it comes to economic systems. You need to summarize what actions are being taken, and would you want to join this protest, and why or why not? Please message me if you need any help.